So most of the videos that I do on this channel have been sort of prepared ahead of time. Somewhat, I try my best to do it, but honestly with work and just having like that 9 to 5 grind for the whole week, it kind of makes it hard to sometimes prep because you got to cook and do all that other stuff. Anyways, the point is this is going to be a long video, and it's going to be a long video for a couple of reasons. One, because I didn't prep ahead of time, and that's due to me wanting this to be as raw as possible. I really want this to be a raw take that people can just watch, see how someone tries to learn something and talk about it. Because I do think that by me talking about it and expressing how I feel about it, hopefully it'll allow me to learn this topic in a new way. And hopefully my audience can resonate with it a little bit better, I think. So it's going to be a long video. We're going to be learning about MCP servers today, and we're going to be building our own MCP server using the Model Context Protocol framework. And I'm going to be using the C# language. And the reason I'm using C# is mainly because I use C# at work, and I just want to get better at it. And tell me if you've ever felt this way. At work, you can be really good at doing the things that you have to do at work, right? Oftentimes, like you fall into this sort of pattern where you go to work, you do the same things over and over again, or even if you're going to work on a new feature, there's sort of this established pattern of doing something, so you get really good at that. But then when you kind of break out of the confines of that, it becomes maybe a little bit hard to work with the language, even though you have experience with it. So I'm sort of maybe, how do I say this? Starting again from ground zero with C# and just using it more to get better at it, and hopefully hopefully that translates into work as well. So if you like C#, then by all means, I think you'll definitely resonate with this video. And even if you don't like C#, remember, the language is just an ends to a mean, or a means to an end, rather. So it doesn't really matter what language you use because the concepts stay the same. So I highly encourage you that if you are watching this video, maybe you're coming from a different language like Python or JavaScript, TypeScript, for example. JavaScript and TypeScript are languages that I have used a lot. So I almost would have naturally gone in that direction, but I'm forcing myself to use another one. I highly encourage you to just watch the video and try it out on your own. Okay, we're going to be following documentation. So this first video is going to be fairly easy, but let me just briefly go over what exactly is that we're going to learn about. And then from there, we'll just go. So again, this is going to be a long video probably. And I promise you, I haven't done any prep work ahead of time. So, if I do make mistakes, that's kind of the point of the video, just to see how I think about this, and let's see what we end up with at the end of the day, okay? So what I want to talk about here is this website right here. So you see that we have the Model Context Protocol website. This website is a website that one of my colleagues told me about, and it's a fantastic website. I think if you have yet to read this Model Context Protocol website, it really goes over the specification, how to use MCP, how to build MCP servers and MCP clients, some of the things that we'll be doing. And it just kind of helps you understand a little bit more about what's happening underneath the hood. And I think that even in this age of AI, where AI can sort of do everything for us, I think it's very important that we still take the time to learn about these internals. And I am by no means an expert on the internals, but by going through this process, I hope that I can continue learning more. And hopefully it's the same for you and anyone watching this video. So like I said, we're going to be going over Model Context Protocol. Specifically on this page, and by the way, I will link to this page in the description, there is a section here called Build an MCP Server. So you can see here, there's a section, Build an MCP Server, get started building your own server to use in Claude for desktop and other clients. Now, let me tell you what the point of all these videos are. I know this is kind of a long intro. We'll get to the meat and potatoes in a second, but the point of these videos is I plan on making like 5 or 10 videos where, if you've watched my previous videos, we've come a long way, right? We've learned a lot about these different contexts. Let me see if I can actually pull up the famous Carpathy post that I always refer to on a lot of these videos here. We've come a long way, okay? If we go back to one of these posts that we first started looking at a long time ago, we've gone over agents and sub-agents, prompts, context, memory, modes, permissions, tools, plugin skills, all this stuff that's just theory. But now what I want to do is make sort of like a 5 or even 10-part series where I start building an MCP server, and ideally we can cross off all these different pieces of info here, all these different things we can integrate into the server and see how we can use them. Like, it's one thing to learn about it in theory, but now I actually want to get my hands dirty on the keyboard and just try to build something out. That's exactly what I'm going to do today. And in a lot of these tutorials, what you'll see is you'll have an MCP server that effectively wraps like an API. And the API that I've decided to use today is one of my favorite ones. I think it's actually pretty neat. It is the themeparks.wiki API. And the reason I picked this one is because I am actually very big into theme parks. If you couldn't tell, this is a Disney Cruise Line hat right here, but I'm into Disney. I grew up in Florida. I live in Florida, so I do like the theme parks. And I feel like using an API like this is a lot more fun than using like a weather API, the example that MCP gives on their website. So I'll be using this API, which I just realized I'm not sharing the screen. I'll be using this API right here. And you can see it has a lot of different endpoints, right? It has endpoints for like getting destinations and getting entity data, entity children. And if we just go and navigate to one of these, you can see, for example, like this has a ton of different destinations, some of them that I cannot pronounce, but I'll focus on some of the ones that I do know, like Magic Kingdom over at Disney World. You can see that we have this object right here that represents Walt Disney World Resort, and then all the different parks like Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Hollywood Studios, Animal Kingdom, Typhoon Lagoon, Blizzard Beach, so on and so forth. You know, if you're familiar with the Walt Disney World area, then all this will be very familiar to you. But that is the API of choice that I'm going to be using. I just think it's fun. It's a lot more interesting than like a weather API. So that's kind of it. So without further ado, this is what I'm going to try and do. I'm going to effectively try and read the documentation at the same time that I'm trying to code. So I'm going to be doing a lot of flipping back and forth, and hopefully it's easy to follow. And what I want you to do is, again, I'm going to have this linked in the YouTube description below. What I think you should do is follow along the documentation. You know, pick an API that is fun for you. It doesn't have to be the theme park API. Pick a language. The cool thing is on the documentation here, they actually give a ton of different languages. So you can do Python, TypeScript, Java, Kotlin, C#, and Rust. We're going to be doing C#. Highly recommend you just stick to a language and figure it out and do what works for you, okay? At the end of the day, that's really the important piece here. Just have fun with it. You know, have fun with what you're writing, have fun with what you're working with, and I think everything will sort of sort itself out. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to go to this build an MCP server. I'm going to choose the C# language, and we're just going to go through this together, okay? So let's get started with building our weather server. You can find the complete code for what we'll be building here. So the prerequisite knowledge. This quick start assumes you have familiarity with C#, large language models like Claude, and .NET 8 or higher. These are very C# specific things, at least .NET 8 and obviously C#. The LLMs like Claude, we're going to be using probably Copilot. That's how I integrate it. So we'll see all that sort of, you know, towards the end, but we'll make sense of it as we keep going. Okay, so logging in MCP servers. It says when implementing MCP servers, be careful about how you handle logging. For stdio, so standard input output, based servers never write to standard output, std out. This includes print statements in Python, console log in JavaScript, fmt.println, print line in Go, or similar standard out functions in other languages. Writing to standard out will corrupt the JSON RPC messages and break your server. For HTTP-based servers, standard output logging is fine since it doesn't interfere with HTTP responses. Okay, best practices, use a logging library that writes to standard error or files. Now we have the system requirements, so let's go ahead and set up all this stuff here. So set up my environments. Let's install .NET if we haven't already. You can download .NET from official Microsoft.NET website. Verify your .NET installation. Wow, someone is really playing music loud. I mean, so loud that my window was vibrating here. Okay, let's create and set up our project. So let me see if we can open up our trusty terminal, which unfortunately I don't think we'll be able to see on the screen. So I'll do one better here. What I'll do is I'll actually go back to Visual Studio. Okay, we'll navigate to Visual Studio here. And I think I'm actually just gonna create a folder in here that we can open. So let me go to open here. Let's go to projects. And I think I wanna call this, I'm going to call this theme park MCP. This will be the folder where actually my MCP server and MCP client are, because eventually I want to make an MCP client as well. So I think that'll be a lot of fun. And we can open up the integrated terminal here. So that's just control and then the backtick. So we'll open up our integrated terminal. Okay, that looks really good. Let me close off this AI window here, the AI chat, just so we can focus on this piece. And what I'm also going to do is, I haven't done this before, because one thing normally when I'm recording, I have, oh, here we go. I normally have OBS on one screen, so I can always kind of see what things look like. But since I only have two monitors at this time, I'm kind of forcing myself to have both the documentation and Visual Studio on at the same time, so I can kind of do both things at the same time, just trusting that things look good. but I'm gonna have to kind of keep toggling around here to make sure everything looks nice. Okay, so we've already created our directory. Now I'm gonna go ahead and let's just start a new project. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in here and we can see that there is a .NET new project. It's discovering project templates. I'm gonna start a console app, which is a very simple application you can do with .NET. So I'm gonna call this Theme Park MCP Server. We'll click enter. We're going to leave it in the default directory, and we're going to use the newer solution format .slnx. Just makes it a lot easier to work with these files. I'll create the project, and hopefully it should already do that with me. So now it looks like we have at least our base solution here. You can see our solution with our one project, which is Theme Park MCP Server. We have VS Code in here, Theme Park MCP Server, and everything sort of looks good. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to start going through the code, okay? Because that's really the fun part. So let's go back to the documentation here. So far, hopefully you've been following along, doing these things yourself, using your own language. If we go back and go to the top here to these different tabs, you can see that, depending on the language you choose, like look at for Python, there's way more stuff here on the right hand side. With TypeScript, it gets a little shorter, and C# even shorter. So, it looks like maybe, let's say for Python, they either just gave a lot more examples, or maybe it's just that much more difficult to get started with Python, which I highly I don't suspect that's the case, since Python is typically an easy language to use. But again, going with C# and continuing on here, we're going to just go ahead and do exactly what it's saying. So following along with me, we just created that new project. Now we're going to go ahead and install some packages. So you can see here it says we're going to add the Model Context Protocol SDK NuGet package, and we're also going to add the .NET Hosting NuGet package. Okay, so I'm just going to run both of these commands directly in my integrated terminal. We're going to go back to Visual Studio Code here. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just copying these commands directly from the website, and you can see that I'm just going to paste them right here. Hopefully the size of the window is big enough that you can see. Let's see, cannot find project. Obviously I have to go inside my project directory. Now if I do an ls here, we can see we have Theme Park MCP Server CS project. So let me go ahead and add that package now. This is something that's, just going back to what I was saying, this is very interesting for me because I've never actually made a video where I'm coding, and it really forces you out of your comfort zone. So again, I might make mistakes here. I hope I make mistakes here. I might kind of fumble on my words a little bit, and that's just because the nerves are definitely in me right now. But ideally, the more and more I do this, the better I get at this, and the better type of videos I'm able to make. So if you're here for this first video, thanks a lot. It means a lot to me. So let's just go ahead and keep going exactly where we left off. So going back to Visual Studio Code, we just added that first package. Now we're going to add the second one here, .NET add package, Microsoft Extensions Hosting. I'm trying to keep this video as high level as I can in future videos, and when I have more prep time, like I said earlier, I didn't really prep for this video, but as I get more prep time in the future, hopefully I can maybe take better notes, or I can go deeper into certain things. Maybe the audience, or in the comments, if you want me to go deeper on any specific thing, or just ask me questions that I can answer on the video, let me know, and I'd be more than happy to do something like that. Okay, now we're getting to the really, really fun part. We're going to build our server. Okay, so again, I am just following documentation directly on the website. I wish there was a cool way that I can have both, or maybe I can kind of show them at the same time just so you can see what I'm reading. But I mean, I guess we can look at what I'm reading real quick, right? So it's the building your server in the C# tab, building our server. You can see I'm just going to pretty much take this code and really just copy it. But I'm going to write it by hand because I do feel like that's the best way for you to learn anything that you're working on. So let's go back now to Visual Studio Code. By the way, when I switch scenes and you see there's like black, it's because I'm having to not only switch scenes, but also manage windows. So it gets a little bit unwieldy at times. Okay, so inside of Theme Park MCP Server, we have our program CS, and I'm just going to start typing exactly what I see here. Okay, so we're going to start with some using statements. So we have Microsoft extensions, dependency injection, using Microsoft.extensions.hosting. We have using model context protocol, and we have using system.net.http headers. Whether or not we actually use all these using statements or all these imports, if we use anything that's referenced in these, let's say, external packages are here, I'm not entirely sure if we will, but again, I'm just doing what's written in the documentation. So it makes it very easy for us to follow along and make sure that we're getting somewhere. Okay, so now we're going to declare a new variable here. So we have var builder. This is going to be equal to host create empty application builder, and it's going to take in settings. And for now, we're going to make this null. Okay, sweet. So now we have builder, services, and this is now where we add the MCP server. So it gives us that capability. We also have stdio server transport and with tools from assembly. Okay, so this is already cool. There's two things that we can sort of go back to based on some of the videos that I did before, right? So we have this stdio server transport, so standard input output. As far as I know, there are a couple different methods, or maybe methods not the right way, but there's a couple different, let's say, popular transports, right? There's standard input output, and then there's streamable HTTP. I think those are like the two big ones right now. There's also like server sense events. I've heard of that before, but I think that's sort of losing a little bit of steam in favor of streamable HTTP. Hopefully in the future, this is also something I could do, maybe even do the same exact code, just using streamable HTTP. But for the purposes of this video, we're gonna stick with standard input output. And one of the cool things is directly on the website, if you go up here to where it says specification and click on this, you're gonna see a section called transports. And on transports right here, you can learn a little bit about standard input output. So standard input output, communication over standard in and standard out. Okay, and if you scroll down here, I kind of like this little image right here. You can see how the whole process is established, how the communication happens, right? So we have the client on the left-hand side, and then we have our server process here. So the client launches this sub-process, and then you can see that in a loop, we're writing to the standard in of the server process. It's writing to standard out, and there's also optional logs on standard error, okay? And this happens in a loop here. This is how we have the communication between client and the server process. And then finally at the end, we close standard in and we terminate that sub process. So you can go in here and read about the specification for standard input output transport. It gives you a lot of really cool, interesting things. Highly encourage you to do that. And maybe again, in a separate video, we can just read the documentation together and sort of think about it and just try to understand what it really means, right? Because again, it's one thing for me to read the documentation in a silo and in my bed, let's say on my phone when I'm comfortable, but making a video about it and putting myself out there hopefully will encourage me to just think about things a little bit differently. Okay, so going back to our code here, again, you can see that when I change those screens, you get a little bit of that black there, but this is just part of the process. So I'm going now back to the build the MCP server. We just kind of finished almost writing our first little bit of code here. So after this, actually there's something I wanted to mention that I completely forgot about. Okay, with tools from assembly, you remember the tools that we talked about earlier on in one of my series, right? I think it's like one of the first videos I made that we talked about agents and sub-agents and tools, memory modes, so on and so forth. So the way that I like to think about tools, right? And this it just makes sense to me. This is an analogy that I like, and maybe you'll like it too, is imagine a tool. I just like to think of like a very specific thing. Like for example, I have this remote right here that controls my fan, right? To me, this is a tool. This is a very specific thing that I can interact with, and how I interact with this expresses some intent, right? There is intent behind the tool that I'm using. In this case, I either want to turn the light off, right? Or I want to have it on, or I want to put the fan on, which I won't do because the air from it will actually cause some, the microphone to pick up some of that. But a tool is like the most simple entity. Imagine I gave you a toolbox and you had a hammer, a Phillips screwdriver, all these different types of tools. They're individual entities that each do a particular function. It's almost like a function in normal, like imperative programming, right? So let's just continue with that. We have tools from assembly, and what this is effectively doing is that it is now allowing our server, let's see what happened here. It's allowing our server now to actually pick up these tools and reference them. So anytime that we actually call into this, we'll have access to these tools. Okay, so just wanted to quickly go over that. So now let's continue on here. We're going to add a new service. We're going to add a singleton because we want this to be shared across the, let's say, the life cycle of our application. We only want a single shared instance of this throughout. And this is, of course, going to be our trusty HTTP client, okay? So we're going to do var client equals new HTTP client, and we're going to give it a base address, which I'll do in a moment. But before that, I'm actually going to just set some other fields here. And again, this is just coming directly from the documentation. Nothing too special here. We haven't, I guess, gotten to the super fun part yet. But new product info header value. Here, we're going to actually send theme park tool. We'll give this a version of 1.0. Now, what this does apparently, this is initializes a new instance of the product info header value class. Okay, so we have a product name and a product version. Maybe this is something specific to MCP. Frankly, I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, we can continue on here. We're going to return the client. And up here, we need to give this a base address. Now the base address is what I'm going to pull from the theme park wiki that I was looking at a little bit earlier. So if I go back here and I share the HTTP API here, you can see they make it so clear there's literally a base URL that we can give this. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. I'm going to go back to Visual Studio and we'll say here new URI. We'll wrap this guy right here. There's a little bit of, all right, so we have new URI. Everything looks pretty good there, if you ask me. Let's close this off right here. Okay, now going back to our code, we have var app equals builder.build. And then finally, we'll do await app.run async. So if you actually start this, you can actually start this server now. So again, if I open up my integrated terminal, make sure that I'm in the project folder. If I now do .NET run, it'll actually run. And you can almost see like it's waiting for input. I don't think this actually does anything in and of itself, but I can only imagine that this might actually be sending this data somewhere, but I don't have anything to actually respond to, which is what we're going to get to next. So I'm just going to cancel this process here. And then now we'll get to the really fun part. Okay. Now we're going to, actually, it's not so fun yet. We still need to create some helper functions. The documentation is instructing me, at least in C# land, to create a helper function. And this helper function is really just a wrapper to sort of retrieve data. It's just an easy way to use the HTTP client to be able to read some JSON documents and then do something with them. So what I'm going to do in C# land is right inside of my project folder here, I'm going to create a new class called HTTP client extensions. .cs. And again, I could just copy and paste this code directly from the website, but I don't think that's the best way to learn. And I hope that if you are, following along, you're not copy pasting. I think it's good to actually get your hands used to typing out all these new things. Even if it's something that you have experience with before, just try it out and see where it goes. So internal static class, we're going to do HTTP client extensions. And then we have a public method, public static async. This is going to be task, JSON document. Okay, so it's going to be read JSON document async. All right, because it's an extension, it's going to take an instance of the HTTP client and also our request URI. All right, and finally, using var response, we're using a using statement because we need to be able to manage that memory. So and make sure that we dispose of these resources. So that's what the using statement is very helpful for. We're going to give it a request URI here. And we're going to do a response, ensure status code. So this will actually throw an exception if it's not a 200, which is nice. So it throws an exception if the HTTP response message is successful status code property. Oh, it says here, the HTTP response message that the call was successful, else it's going to throw an exception. Okay, and then finally we will do return await JSON documents. From here we'll do parse async. Inside here we'll do await response content read as stream async. Okay, we're using streaming here so we can sort of incrementally get a response back instead of allocating space for a string, and then it just takes up a little bit more memory. So a stream is actually preferred method of doing it here. And again, obviously it's what they're showing us in the documentation, but I did some research on my own on the side, just learn a little bit more about that and just to be able to talk a little bit about it on the video. Okay, so continuing on here, now I think it's when we get to the fun part. We're actually going to start defining our tools, okay? So if you go back to those videos I did earlier on about tools and agents and sub-agents, this is where we now start to build the meat of our server. And one thing that I think is very cool about this is we are building an MCP server, right? We're exposing tools that agents can actually interact with. So similarly to how might you go inside of Visual Studio Code, for example, let's see if we can actually do that together. If I open up Copilot here, or open up the chat window and I go to tools, you can see here, and I really hope it's showing on the screen. Oh, it's not, maybe, hopefully, I think it should. Here we go. These are all the different tools we have, right? So on the bottom right here, I clicked on this tool icon, and we can see that there's a ton of different built-in tools, right? There's agent tool, there's edit tool, execute, read, search, to do. These are just built-in tools, but you can imagine when we build new tools, we can actually include them and make them available for our agent to use, which is exactly the process we're going to now. But now we're not just using tools, like we're actually building the tools and figuring out how it works under the hood. Now we're moving to just consumers and we're actually becoming producers and creators of MCP servers, right? You can effectively take any data you want and create an MCP server, I think, just by learning these basic functions, these basic ways of creating tools using the framework. So let's again continue here and see what we can get to. Okay, so the next class I'm going to create is the fun one, and I'm going to call this, let's say, theme park tools.cs. Okay, so let me close the chat window there just to have enough real estate and start doing the same using statements we did from before. Okay, so using model context protocol dot server, using system dot component model, using system dot globalization, using system dot text dot JSON. We'll create a namespace here. So I'll say theme park server dot tools. Okay, and then now check this out, MCP server tool type. When we decorate this class with MCP server tool type, we go back to our program, this with tools from assembly, look what it says here, adds types marked with the model context protocol dot server dot MCP server tool type attribute from the given assembly as tools to the server. So this, I'm assuming, will sort of crawl your code base, look for this attribute that is decorating the class, and then add it to the tools that now are exposed by the MCP server and can ideally be selected from that tool pane that I showed you in the bottom right of the Visual Studio Code window. All right, so public static class theme park tools. We're having a lot of fun here. I think we're about to see really how fun this can get. So MCP server tool description, and now it's when things start to get a little bit fun, because now I'm not doing exactly what's on screen, but using that more so as a reference. So what is the description of this? So in their example with the get weather alerts, the description is get weather alerts for a US state code. Now the description is very important here because it actually instructs and it helps the agent understand the intent of this tool, okay? These are different types of keywords or hints that you can give the agent to make a well-informed decision on what tool it should use to get the job done. In this case, the first thing I want to do is get destinations. I want a list of destinations that I can use. So let's see, let's make this get a list of theme park destinations. Okay, I think that's a decent description. We're going to do public static async task string get destinations. Okay, and we're going to pass it an instance of that HTTP client because we're actually going to be making a request to that server. All right, so now we're going to be doing something interesting. Now, if we read the code, just like where we are right now, right? Not read the code, but let's read the document. You'll see that they're using JSON document, okay? They're using JSON document, they're using JSON document root element, they're enumerating arrays here, so on and so forth. And the reason that they're doing this here, because I looked this up, is using JSON document is just easier for a demo. I can sit here and make models, right, and make things very typed, and hopefully that will come at a later point, but I think just for the sake of the demo, using something like this is just a lot more straightforward. It's a lot easier for us to actually get results. So I think with all that being said, let's continue on to the next piece right here. Let's go back to the code, all right, and let's see exactly what's happening here. So if we go back, let's look at the shape. Let's look at the shape of the code here. Or not the shape of the code. Let's look at the shape of the response. So if I go back to the browser, let me zoom up here a little bit. You can see that we have destinations. We have this array where each object in this array represents a destination, right? Now that destination can have multiple parks, right? So for example, this one right here, which I cannot pronounce, it looks like it has 4 different parks. This one right here has 1 park. This one has 1 park. This one has 1 park, for example, right? So depending on the destination, we'll have different types of parks. But I think right now it's okay for me. What would I actually like to see? Would I rather see the top level park or the individual parks? Like if I query my MCP server to give me a list of destinations, maybe I don't necessarily need to, let's say, get like maybe I just need to know that Walt Disney World exists, not necessarily that Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and all those exist, right? Maybe what I can do is create multiple MCP tools. Like one tool will just be for the outer destination, and if I want to get more information about a single destination, that's when I can then return the more information. And that's something I really want to pinpoint here, right? My naive way of thinking up until this point was that a tool necessarily has to bind to an endpoint. So you can see in the theme park wiki that we were just looking at, they had endpoints for destinations, entity data, and I thought to myself, well, I'll just create a tool that maps one-to-one. But really a tool is all about intent. Okay, so you think about how an end user would use your MCP server, and the tool should express that. Okay, so if let's say I want information about, ride times or queue wait times in a specific park, I can call a tool that says get wait times for some attraction and it'll return that for me. Or maybe I can say get wait times in general for Magic Kingdom. Or I can say give me the shortest wait times right now. What happens in your tool, any amount of things can happen inside your tool. And I think ideally you might even want to actually aggregate data from multiple sources so you can return something that's meaningful. I learned that if you're just mapping endpoints one-to-one, what's going to happen is your agent actually has to go and make many tool invocations when instead it can just do one, get all the information it needs, and return that back to the user. So I think what's interesting is when you're designing your MCP servers and you're creating your tools, think about the intent and think about how the end user will use your MCP server to get whatever it is they want to get done in the best way possible. Think about if you were sitting, what tool would I like to have that would give me the most relevant information. So with all that being said, let's go back to the browser here. I think what I'm going to do now is just return this outer one here from all the different names. And I think that sort of makes sense. So let's go back to the code here. Going back, the first thing I'm going to do here is using var JSON document. Okay. And this is going to be await client read JSON document async. And for this one, it should just be, let's say, destinations. So we're going to do destinations. Let me actually go back here and make sure that this should have a slash. Now, let me see if I'm right about this before I say anything, because I was actually kind of fooling around with this earlier today, and I learned about something that I didn't quite understand. But now that we're here and I've already done it, let's see what happens. And if it works, it works. And if not, I'll tell you why. Okay, cool. So var JSON elements. This is going to be JSON document root element. So if we go, if we think about that JSON structure we just saw, this is going to effectively be the outer object or the main object. Okay. So var, I realize I say okay a lot. That's like a habit I have to stop. I don't love saying okay all the time because I feel like when you're listening to the video, it's kind of annoying. Like, okay. I have to learn how to not say okay every single time I end a thought. So var destinations, or so I say that too. JSON element, get property. In this case, it's going to be destinations and enumerate array. If there are no destinations, right? No destinations. Again, just really following the sample code. This is as much of an exercise for me as it is for hopefully you watching. And again, it's easy for you to sit in front of your computer alone, not doing a video, going through this. But as soon as I start talking about it, that's when I really feel now I'm teaching. Now I'm trying to learn and I'm making new connections in my head. And I think we're all learning something here. So we're going to say if there's no destinations, no destinations found. How terrible. No theme park destinations. That's kind of like a sad existence, right? Return string.join. And here we're going to use the new line terminator here to sort of force things to look nice in a nice formatted way. We'll grab our destinations. We'll select a destination. And here, what we can just do should just be destination get property name and then get string at the end. Okay. So let's see what happens. Okay, so we've gotten to the point now where, hey, guess what? We kind of follow the documentation and we have a tool that maybe will work. But how exactly do we run it? That's the next thing I want to show you all here. There is a cool page. So let's do something like Visual Studio Code MCP. So using MCP servers in Visual Studio Code. Apologies, I was not sharing my screen there. Put this in dark mode so I don't burn your eyes if you're watching this at night. So use MCP servers in VS Code. There's actually a way, there's a specific configuration method that you can use for this. And I want to see if I memorized it, okay? All I'm going to say is that I highly recommend reading this document if you use Visual Studio Code. I'll try to remember to link this document. So this one and the MCP one, but definitely read through this. You can see here, it's all about model context protocol. It tells you how to use MCP servers in VS Code. Obviously use it in whatever IDE makes sense for you. You might have to find new documentation. And I think it might change per model too. I'm not entirely sure per AI model how you're using it, but at least using Copilot, this is how it is. And this is how we're going to do it. So hopefully if you're watching along, you're following along, it all makes sense. So as far as I know, we are going to open VS Code here. And inside of VS Code, I'm going to create a new file called mcp.json. And I think if I remember correctly, the way that we do it here is we define a new object here and we call this servers. Okay, and we do, oh, there you go. It kind of already filled this up for me. This is not really what I wanted, but it gives us a good starting point. My server is not called MCP server time. It's called, I'm gonna call this theme park. I think that's a good way of doing it. And what's the command that I'm gonna run? I'm gonna run .NET. Okay, that's the name of the command. Okay, now the arguments I'm gonna pass here are going to be run, and we're going to say project. Okay, and we want to give it, I believe I need the project one, and I think I also need to give it the absolute path of where my project is. So opening up the integrated terminal here, doing an ls, we're in the right folder. So let me do pwd for parent working directory. I'm gonna copy this here. Gonna enter this here. And typically in documentation, you'll see something called no build. And I think they do this because if you have a heavy MCP server and every time you start the server, it has to build, it might take long, but then it means you have to remember to build before restarting it. So because I just want it to build for me when I run .NET Run, I'm not actually gonna have this. And we're just gonna pretty much keep it at this, okay? So we just have a command. We have servers, theme park, command.net, run project. We have this project right here. And let's pretty much just see what happens, okay? Ideally, at the end of this, when I click start, we should see one tool that's exposed. So let's click start. Let's see if there's more. Oh, it looks like there is one tool. Can we go to the output here? There should be some output. Wow, there is a lot of different stuff here. I wonder if we can see, this is the language server, Claude VS Code, NuGet, Microsoft Authentication. Is there anything here that looks like what it is that I'm looking for? Typically, if I have trouble finding this, normally if I just click restart, it will show me. Okay, so this does look like MCP theme park. And now check this. You can see that there is a single tool that I've found. And if what we just discussed earlier is correct, if I now open the integrated chat window here and click on tools, you can see now that it is there. Theme park, get destinations, get a list of theme park destinations. Okay, so now let's see if we can actually talk to our agent now and use our agent to invoke it, and let's see what happens. So I normally like to start off with something like, and let me just make sure everyone can see what's on the screen here. Okay, that looks good to me. So let's say, are you able to invoke the get destinations tool from the theme park, right, MCP server? Let's see what this does. It says working. Now this is auto model selection. I should have set this beforehand and actually use like my own GPT, but this is just using all the free stuff here. I'm not even signed in or anything. Let's see how good any of this is. A lot of times these auto models are really, really poor at doing anything, which I already see. I mean, this is actually outputting way more than I really needed. It's adding a short to do, run get destinations, allow in session. Let's see, an error occurred invoking get destinations, and that's fine. This is actually exactly what I wanted to see, and I have a feeling I know what's wrong, only because the last time this was happening to me, let me see, I attempted to invoke the MCP get destinations tool, but it returned an error. Would you like me to pick one? Okay, would you like me to pick one? Try again now, inspect, start the theme park MCP server process logs, or show the commands to run locally so you can invoke it. What I'm gonna do is we're actually just gonna go back and let's see if actually wrapping this in a try catch will actually yield some more information, because that's what I did earlier, and that's exactly what helped me get that information. So let's just see what we have here. So JSON document, await client, read JSON document async, destinations. And if we go back, make sure and program, this looks like the right URL here. Instead of theme park tools, we're at /destinations, JSON element, we got the root element, we have destinations here. If I go back to the overall, yep, that looks right to me. Destinations.enumerate array. If there aren't any, no destinations found, then we join. So for every single destination, we're choosing one, and inside of that, we're choosing the name, get string, and that's what we return. So yeah, it definitely looks like something happened here. So let's see what's wrong. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to effectively just like wrap this whole thing, right? So let's do a try catch exception E. Let's see what all this is. So I want to kind of, honestly, I'm just going to throw this whole thing in there. Okay, this is the whole thing that I want to try. And you know, there was a really nice error message that I was using earlier that I just completely forgot about now. I wonder if I can remember what's a good one to use, or what properties. If we do this, we have this. E data get type gets a collection of, oh wait, is this okay? stack trace, maybe that could be good, or message. Maybe just doing that is enough. Let's see what happens. I think what we have to do now is actually restart our MCP. So let's go back to mcp.json. We're going to go ahead and restart this. The good news is that we actually are getting the tool. So normally what I like to do now is I literally just ask, I just wrapped the tool invocation in a try catch. Can we try again? Let's see if this gives us anything. What was happening earlier when I was just fooling around with all this is I was getting a 404. The reason I was getting a 404 is because the way that the HTTP client is initialized in C#, if you don't add a trailing slash, I think it's if you don't add a trailing slash, or if you have a trailing slash on the path you want to append, it actually will remove everything. Like it'll only keep the root, but it won't include anything that came after. So if we have like api.themepark.com/v1, right, as the base, but then in my tool, I'm actually using destinations, it's going to become api.themepark.com/destinations and remove the v1. So if I remember correctly, the fix was to add a trailing slash and then a leading slash or a trailing slash, both. Just make sure there's a slash at the end of the base URL and a slash in the beginning of that path segment that actually points us to destinations. So it says here, still hitting a 404, the MCP server may not be running, or the endpoint isn't configured. Is the theme park MCP currently running? If not, I can help start it or check the MCP.json. Am I sharing my screen here? Okay, cool. Let's go back and see what's wrong. So one thing I actually wanted to do, it's a video that I wanted to make to see, to learn about how to debug this, because I have actually been having such a tough time attaching a debugger to this process to step through it to see what's wrong. That's hopefully a video that I plan to make in the future, but let's just bear with me here. So let us see if we can figure this out. So I do have this slash right here, and I see that I also have, let me remove this one because I don't need this one. I also have this one here. So it's a little bit interesting. It would be nice if we can see exactly what this is returning. So we have, e.message is hitting a 404. This suggests the MCP server may not be running or the endpoint isn't available. Let me ask the user if the server is running, or I can help her start it, MCP.json configuration, to see what's expected. So why is this happening? I wonder. I'm just going to try literally just removing this, because maybe that's not, maybe the case is we actually don't need that. So let's remove the slash there. And again, let's go back to here. Let's restart this. Okay, let's see if we can invoke this again. If not, we're going to try debugging this in a different way. So let's try again and invoke the same tool. Let's see what this is doing here. Okay, try invoking the tool. Oh, great, the tool worked this time. Okay, awesome. So I guess what was happening here is that it looks like maybe inside of read JSON document, it doesn't actually want a slash there, because again, maybe that slash, even though there's a slash at the end of the URL here, again, maybe that slash is actually removing this v1. So it's just becoming api.themeparks.wiki/destinations and not /v1/destinations. So when I learned about that earlier, that seemed like a very nuanced and very particular thing about HTTP client, that unless you run into this, I don't know if you'll know. I'm sure probably in documentation it says it somewhere. But anyway, now that we got this back, let's see what we can get. So the get destinations tool successfully returned 95 theme parks, including major chains like Disney, Universal, Six Flags, SeaWorld, Legoland, and many regional parks worldwide. Now, it's still reasoning about something, which I don't really want it to. I'm not sure why it is. Again, this is why these models are kind of not really the best, but let me see if I just choose one instead of just relying on auto, what I can do. This is going to be, let's just kill that and let's see if we can return it. I think it'd be nice if we can actually limit this and maybe just return a couple. But I think for now, maybe this is actually fine, because I just wanted to show how just a single tool worked. But now I think let's do something a little bit more fun, and let's see if we can create actually a different tool that does something a little bit more interesting. So I think what I would like to see is maybe get a list of attractions at a certain theme park. Okay, so let's see how that would work in theory, just using the API documentation. So the way that this would work, okay, here we go. The way that this would work is we have a single endpoint here, right? So we have base URL. Now we have this endpoint here for destinations. So if we go back to destinations, we see that each one has an ID, right? So ID here. Again, I'm going to use the example of Magic Kingdom just because I'm familiar with Magic Kingdom. You can see that Walt Disney World here has an ID. What I want to do is I would imagine I need to first call destinations, because in order for me to pass an ID to any of these different URLs, you can see they have the ID here. Well, maybe you can't see because I'm so zoomed out, but each of them have that path parameter ID, okay? What I think I want to do is get entity live data. So let's see, if I copy this one, let me actually open a new tab here, put this in there. And before I actually request it, let's get the ID of Magic Kingdom, okay? Magic Kingdom, we're gonna put this right here, live, and let's see what this gives us. Okay, so now this actually gives us information about attractions inside of Magic Kingdom Park. Now, some of the interesting things that you can see are, for example, okay, so we have Magic Kingdom Park, the entity type is park here, but you can see for all the different types of entities, some of them are restaurants, some of them are show. Let's see, there's a lot of other data here. Some of them, for example, are attraction, so that's pretty cool. So I think we probably are gonna wanna filter off that. So I think we kind of have an idea of what we want. So if we now go back to the documentation, which is right here, you can see that the next tool invocation here, and even this one, to be fair, this tool invocation also uses an argument state. So probably what we'll want to do is use a, let's say, a park name. So I'll do something similar here. Similarly, all these arguments can take descriptions. So not only the tool itself takes a description, but even the individual arguments. For example, state, the description is the US state code to get alerts for. Remember, the example here is for weather, not for a theme park like what we're doing. So I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code and I'm going to follow a little bit about what's happening there. I can probably close the chat window for now just so we have maximum real estate. I'm going to close all this stuff here. And now let's start sort of just working on that next one. So we have MCP server tool, again, MCP server tool description. For this one, I'll probably say get a list of attractions in a theme park, or maybe in a destination, just to be more generic, right? In a destination. And just to make sure, okay, destination. Get a list of theme park destinations. Get a list of attractions in a theme park destination. Okay, we're going to do the same thing. So public static async task string. Let's say get attractions. That's probably, I think, the best, right? We're going to have an instance of HTTP client, and let me put this on a new line so it's just a little bit easier to read. Okay, and then we're going to come here. We're going to say description, and here we can say the name of the destination to fetch attractions for. It sounds like a pretty good description if you ask me. So here, let's do string park name. Now there's a couple of different things we're gonna have to do there. And typically for me, what helps is sort of breaking this down into steps that I can follow. And you might see this a lot in other code that you read online. You sort of just make a comment block of steps you have to do. And for me, that just helps me sort of reason about what it is that I'm working on. So what do we know we need to do, right? And this kind of goes, what I like about this example is it goes back to what I was saying earlier about intent, right? So for getting attractions, I'm not just going to call a single endpoint. I'm going to be calling multiple endpoints and aggregating the data and returning that back to the user. And this is because this represents intent. I want this tool to be helpful and useful for a very specific thing. In this case, it's going to be getting attractions for a theme park or a destination as it's referenced in the documentation. Okay, excuse me. So get attractions. Let's see. So let's see if we can sort of just come up with a list of things here. So the first thing I want to do is get a list, right? Get a list of attractions. And after that, or rather not of attractions, I want to get a list of destinations. And then probably what I want to do, because this is going to be by park name, or rather by destination. So it's not just the outer one, it could be the inner one. And this kind of brings up a very interesting point here. Because if you do, well, I guess it works both ways, and I'll explain to you what I mean in a second. So let's say get a list of destinations, and from there we want to filter based on the park name. Okay, when we can say grab ID of destination name, destination name, the name of the destination to fetch attractions for. Let's say here string destination, because again, remember the API is /destination. So I think we should be very clear. These are destinations and not just theme parks. Grab ID of destination name, and then use the, let's say, let's go to, let's see, Magic Kingdom Park. I just realized I'm talking about destinations. We can actually do, there's another endpoint that's /children. And I think with /children, I'm actually doing this on the other window, so that's why you don't see it. I just want to make sure we're doing the right thing here. So /children, I think that actually does what we need. We don't need live data for this. I just want to see the attractions that exist, okay? So we have the name and we have everything. So that's the endpoint we're going to use. So let me actually put this here. Use the children endpoint. So this is an example. This ID here is actually the ID of Magic Kingdom. So that's going to be helpful there. So use the children endpoint and grab attractions and profit. Something like this, right? Something like this is the general outline of what we're going to be doing. So without further ado, let's start doing it. We're going to need very, very similar code to what we've already done once. So to get the list of destinations, what are we going to do? We know exactly how to do that already. So using var JSON document, we'll say here await. And you know what I want to do just to be a little bit more specific? Instead of JSON document, let's see. Actually, I think that's probably fine, but JSON documents too, I think general for what we're doing here. So let's say this is destinations JSON documents equals await client read JSON document async. We'll just call destinations here. Okay. Just to make sure that we did the same thing earlier. That all looks good. And now we'll do var. Let's do destination JSON element. Okay. This is JSON document dot root element. Oh, what happened here? JSON document. Oh, of course, I need to use the destinations JSON document dot root element. Then we're doing var destinations now is going to be equal to destination JSON element dot get property destinations and a new word array. So just from this, we effectively have the same exact, right? The same exact sort of mapping that we have up here. Now, this is the interesting thing. Let's go back to the JSON response that we got earlier here. And let's see if we can find this one, right? So we have this massive list here, and you can imagine that someone's going to type in either the name here or the name here. So it's almost like I need to be able to kind of like flatten all these out, because what if I just want to use Walt Disney World? Actually, let's use that as an example. If I go to Walt Disney World Resort, okay? This one right here for children, do I still have that one open? This data right here is all the attractions from Magic Kingdom Park, and that's because I gave it the ID of Magic Kingdom Park. Now, what happens if I give it the ID of Walt Disney World Resort? Is it going to give me every single attraction in Walt Disney World Resort? I mean, maybe that is the case. It looks like it will. Walt Disney World Resort. Hello. I mean, yeah, this is returning stuff from Disney Springs. And I just know that because I have actually been to, yeah, this is all Disney Springs stuff. So it looks like it's doing everything in every single area. So this is the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. That is inside Magic Kingdom. So it seems like we need to not only get the outer, we also need to get the inner. And this is going to be a little bit interesting on how to do this. So if we look at the outer object, well, let's look at this Magic Kingdom Park. Let's go back to destinations here and let's look at how this data is formatted. So for every single object, right? Excuse me. For every single object, we have a name. And then inside of that, we also have parks with names. So what's the best way to format this? Now, I feel like almost I would have done this a little bit easier using JavaScript, TypeScript. Maybe this might be something I'm going to have to not do on video here, else this video might be a lot longer. And what I might just do to make this simple is just flatten all the different destinations just inside each one of these. So you're going to have to be very specific. You won't be able to ask in general, which I think makes sense. If I want to know a list of attractions inside of Disney World, I mean, sure, I can get a massive list containing all that, but maybe just for the purposes of the video, let me be specific about the park and just get the destinations in there. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back here. Let me make sure I go to Visual Studio first. And let's see what we can do. I think what I can do here is, can we flatten this whole entire thing? So var destinations, destination JSON element get property, destinations, enumerate array. And for each destination, so let's say, can we do, maybe not even filter based on destination name for our destinations? What if we do var all destinations is going to be equal to destinations dot destinations enumerate array. Oh, I didn't actually call this method. Let's make sure we do that. So select many destination. Okay, let's do destination dot get property. Here we'll do parks dot enumerate array. So this should be able to, because if we see this, right, projects each element of a sequence to an IEnumerable and flattens the resulting sequences into one sequence. So one thing that we can do here, let me just actually, I have Prettier installed for C#, but it doesn't work like it does for, like if this was a JavaScript file, all this would have already been on a new line just to make it a little bit easier. But I think maybe just this alone, we might be able to start getting some data. So let's go and do return, very similar to what we did earlier here. So return string join. We'll use the new line here, so that way we can format things nicely. And here we'll say all destinations dot select. We'll say destination dot get property. We'll get the name of it and get string. So let's see just what this returns. So if we go now back to MCP.json and we restart this here, ideally we should see two tools, which we do. Okay, so this is good. Let's now open our chat window. This is on GPT-5 mini. So let's see the different tooling that we have available now. If I click the tools in the bottom and look at theme park, now we have get destinations, get attractions. Let's just do, get attractions. Now get attractions should just return a list of all destinations. That's all it's going to do right now. So can you invoke the get attractions tool? It should return a large list of multiple destinations. Or maybe, I don't think multiple, that's kind of redundant. So it should return a large list of destinations. So let's see what this does here. Is it going to work? Who knows? We are just figuring this out as we go along. So planning attractions retrieval. I'm choosing a different model. I'm hoping that it's a little bit better. Setting up to purpose. See, I don't know why it has to create a to-do list and everything. Why can't it just do the thing? I've realized with like the cheaper models, it really just goes like all over the place. So it created 5 to-dos. Ask which destinations to fetch attractions. It's going to ask me which ones I want because I have it. Yeah. Walt Disney World, invoking get destinations. Let's try. I feel like the fact that it even took something like this and it recognized it leads me to believe we're on the right track here. I'll just choose Walt Disney World Resort for now. Analyzing your answers. Okay. I asked which destination, receive Walt Disney World Resort. Next, I'll invoke destination proceed. Yes, I want to proceed, but yes, proceed. It'd be nice if it didn't stop to ask and it just did it. Let's see what it does now. Maybe I acted too quick. Maybe I wasn't actually supposed to put yes, proceed there. Let's see what it says. Or let's see what it's doing. It's working currently. So let's see what happens. And maybe in the meantime, we can actually start even doing, okay, I'll update the to-do list. I'll update the to-do list and then call get attractions for Walt Disney World Resort and return the results. It's preparing. It's running. Looks like that did something. Looks like that was successful. But again, it's taking a little bit long here. Completed, invoke, get attractions, done. Okay, returned a large, okay, so look at this. We actually have a large list of destinations, and this is good. This is exactly what I wanted to see, right? I was hoping that I would get a list like this, and it would be exactly what I need. So now we have an entire list. So the cool thing is by using MCP, we're actually able to get some of these data points out, and it's really fun. It's really cool. Now, I just realized so far we've effectively done the same thing that this first one's doing there. You know, what you could actually do is instead of creating tools, like you see that we've already sort of used the same functionality of get destinations in here. You can even abstract this a little bit more and create like your own client that does this for you, like a theme park client. So in here, you can just call get destinations, and in here, you can again call destinations. So you don't have to repeat this code twice. But again, these are things that we can just do in a separate video, and it's likely something that I will do in a separate video to make things a little bit more robust and a little bit more professional. But going back to the documentation here, I think at this point, I don't really need to go back to the documentation, but now I know that I have a list of all these different destinations. So we have all destinations here. So what we want to do is now filter based on the destination name, and I want this to be case insensitive. Okay, so what we could do is, let's say, string destination. We're given a destination, and I can't believe I'm blanking out on this right now, but what's the best way for me to find exactly the destination I want inside of this array? I can't believe I'm blanking out of this, but that's what the internet's for. Okay, so can we do, let's see, find specific object in array. Let's do C# case insensitive. Okay, how can I make case? Oh, even doing something better for us here. So array any, where all this stuff here. So check if any element in the array equals the search term ignoring case. So bool exists if it exists, found search term. No, but I actually want, oh yeah, first or default. That's what I was looking for. S dot equals string comparison or ordinal ignore case. So string match. Well, let's do exactly that. Okay. So filter based on the destination name. So let's do here var, and maybe we can call this, let's say found destination is going to be equal to all destinations. Let me actually remove this return statement because we don't need it. So all destinations dot first or default destination, where destination is not equal to null, and here we go, destination dot equals, and we'll say here, let's say equals destinations, or rather not destination, but destination. And I just realized there's going to be a little bit of shadowing here. I don't really want this to be destination. So all destinations, first or default. I don't love calling this dest, but for the sake of this, I'll call this dest. So dest not equal to null, and dest dot equals destination. And we'll use string comparison ordinal ignore case. So string comparison dot ordinal ignore case. So that's it for this, and it looks like maybe there's a couple of issues here. So let's see what it says. It says read-only operator cannot be applied to operands of type system or type JSON element and null. Dest equals member object equals cannot be accessed with an instance reference. Qualify it with a type name instead. Determines whether the specified object true if the objects are considered equal, otherwise false. If both object A and object B are null, the method returns true. So what exactly is happening here? So operator cannot be applied to operands of type JSON element and null. So I guess we can't compare JSON element with null. Maybe that's what's happening here. Or maybe we can do something a little bit different. I think this is either way. I'm reading this now, and equals is probably not what we want, because that way maybe they don't type the entire thing. Like I wouldn't want someone to type Walt Disney World Resorts even with the copyright symbol. I think that's what actually showed up inside of the result here. Let me see if it actually shows up. Oh, well, Walt Disney World don't show up in here because remember, we're actually getting the parks that are nested, not the outer ones. So what I'd like to do instead is maybe use a contains. So first or default. Let's see how we can actually use contains for this. Using array.findIndex. Let me actually do this so it's a little bit better, because I want us to look at all this together. So let's dive deeper in AI mode, okay? Yeah, use contains with a compare, use array.find or array.exists, finding the index for arrays of custom objects, comparison types. We can do something like I want to use the contains method so that a user does not have to type the exact search term. we can use first or default with it. Let's see what Google AI has to tell us here. So we are using AI, we're learning, okay? You can combine first or default with contains to find the first object whose property partially matches the user input regardless of case. So let's see what this says. Okay, so finds the first item containing app. So fruits first or default F, where F contains search term, string comparison, ordinal ignore case. There's also for an array of objects. Okay, so everything here looks good. Var user. So let's just go ahead and do this. I like this example here. Let's see if this works. So instead of doing all this stuff right here, we're now just going to do, we're going to keep the first or default, but this time we're going to say dest, and we'll say dest dot get property, and let's say here name. Okay, dest dot get property dot get string. Okay. And here we can say contains, maybe inside of here we say destination. Here we do string comparison. Oh, string comparison. Oh, what's happening here? String comparison, ordinal ignore case. And I think at the end here we need a true, if I remember correctly. Let's see what's happening here. So dereference of a possibly null reference. If I remember earlier, I think by adding this here, right, because this can be null just in case. Okay, so it's this right here allows us to get past that. So let me just make this a little bit more easy to read. Right, so we can add this there. I think that's sort of okay. Usually I like to always break where there's sort of like a parentheses. Maybe this doesn't look very sexy, but it is what it is. Let me just wrap this here and do this like this. So we have all destinations. We have the first or default destinations where the name and the string of that name contains the destination. It's a case insensitive search. And if all that is true, it will find something. So if found destination, now something here is interesting. Value kind equals JSON value kind undefined, right? Because we're dealing with JSON values here. Then we can say return, let's say no destination with name destination was found. Great. So ideally now at this point, right, what do we have at this point? We're grabbing all the destinations and we're filtering down to the one that has the same name. So in our case, if we open up our chat window again, we should have Magic Kingdom in here. Walt Disney Studios Park, Disneyland, Magic Kingdom Park. So this is what I want to find. And at the end of all this, we can return all the different, let's say, all the different attractions inside of it. So now we'll be able to get the ID. So let's say var destination ID equals found destination dot get property. Let's go back to our, let's see, go back to this right here. This is the longest video I've ever made. I mean, we're over an hour right now. So if you're still watching now, I mean, that's phenomenal. I think that's really cool. Probably have to make this video a lot shorter in the future, but there's always a first time for everything, you know? Okay, so we have the ID now, right? So we're just gonna grab the ID from here, and that's what we'll use to actually invoke the next API, which is the children API. So let's go back here. Let's do get property. This is ID. We're going to do get string here. So we have destination ID. Okay, get list of destinations, filter based on the destination name. Let's see, this is grab ID of destination name. So I'm actually going to move this up here where it makes sense. So making good progress here so far. We have the ID, and now we need to do the children endpoint. Okay, so kind of like exactly what we did earlier. Let me close this out here. We're going to pretty much just do the same thing up here. So using var destinations JSON document, let's now say, let's just create a new line here. So using var, and maybe I'd like to call this destinations JSON document. Let's say destination children JSON document equals await client.read JSON document async. This is going to be what? So previously we had destinations. Now it's just going to be, it's going to be entity slash, and I just realized, so we have the destination ID, right? Destination ID slash children. And then again, I'm using very similar naming here. So destination document. Now we have var destination children, And this is going to be JSON element equals destination, JSON document dot root element. Finally, we have our destination. So we can here say var destination children equals destination, say children JSON element. Let's go again back to our browser here so we can see how this data is formatted. So I think it's this one right here. Now we want to get the children array, right? We want to get the children array here. So let's go back to here and we're going to do get property children enumerate array. Okay, awesome. And now we should have an array of all the children, of all the children as part of the park that we gave it. But that's not enough, right? Now we actually need to filter. If we go back and look at let's actually go back here and look at the window that we have just so we can see what's happening. You see now that there are different entities here. Some of them are show, right? Show, attraction. So I think we want to filter based on all of them that have an entity type of attraction. So let's see how we can do that. Let's just start messing around. We should be able to do this with link statements. So destination children. What we can even do from now is we can say var destination children attractions. So maybe we can say destination children dot select, or probably the best, I think that's probably fine. Yeah, we can select all. So let's say destination, and let's say, let me see, do all of these have, I'm assuming they all have an entity type, right? So we should find the first one that contains, or maybe in this case, it doesn't necessarily need to be contains, but it can be select. And let me see what the best way of doing this is. If I want to go back, I'm going to go back here and say, okay, now I want to filter or select items in an array of objects that have a specific property value. For example, if I have an object with, let's say, entity attraction, right? Entity attraction. I want to find all objects with that property and value. Is that redundant? Property and value. Okay, let's see what Gemini has to tell us. The basic filter using system link. So we can do data where item entity attraction, string comparison to array. I'll probably do a to list here. Okay. There it is again. Okay. I'm always saying okay. Okay, so we're doing data destination children. We're going to do where dest, and we'll say here dest dot get property. I think this is going to be entity type. Okay, entity type dot get string. Okay, dot equals something a little bit different now. We're going to say attraction. And even though we know, well, I think it will probably always be uppercase because that's what it looks like, but just to make this a little bit better. And then at the end, we're going to make this whole thing a list. And I think it's the same thing that we had here earlier, right? Or not. So dereference of a possibly null reference, get string. So previously we were able to get past this. So destination, dereference of a possibly null string, gets a JSON element representing the value of a required property. So it's not happening with get string, so it still doesn't like that. And does it actually happen if we even do it after this piece right here? It doesn't like that either. So let's see. Dereference of a possibly null reference. And why is that the case? Get string is entity type. Can it be null? Can we actually get a fix here? I wonder. Let's see. Suppressor configure issues. Let's see what actually AI can do for us here. Fix, dereference, generating edits. What does it want me to do here? What's going to help? So I could have sworn this is what we did earlier. No, is this not what we did? If we do, oh, because we need this true down here. Okay, that makes sense. And I also, see, I want to explain that. So can we actually see why that works the way it does? Let me see, online, let's see, on line 64 inside of theme park tools, why is it that we need the after get string? And why do we need to compare the equals? Is it the equals method? Yeah, the equals method using true. Let's see what GPT-5 mini tells us here. This is a good way of using AI here. I think it just makes it, you want to use it as an assistant, someone that you can learn from. You don't want to just let it do all the work for you. Trust me, I swung really hard in one way with vibe coding and just letting it do everything. I had a lot of fun with it, but now I'm kind of maturing. I'm learning a little bit. I'm becoming a little wiser and trying to get my hands dirty again by getting hands on keyboard before just really trusting the AI all the way. Okay, so short answer, because getString can return null, the code guards against a null reference exception and converts the resulting nullable bool into a plain bool. JSON element getString is a string. It returns null if the JSON value is missing or null. Calling an instance method on a null string would throw. The null conditional operator means call equals only if the string is non-null, otherwise produce null. So getString equals has type bool. Comparing the bool to true yields a regular bool that is true only when the comparison returned true. If it returned false or null, the overall result is false. This is necessary because links where and similar APIs require a bool, not bool. So it's almost like we're forcing it to be of type bool instead of this bool right here with the question mark. So this is something that we'll likely come to at a later time. Again, it's crazy because I can write code at work for very specific things, but then here where it's just something entirely brand new, it always becomes a little bit more difficult. And of course, recording the video also makes it a lot harder as well. But that's besides the point. We're making great progress here. And if I'm right, it seems like maybe we're at the end, because right now we do have a list, right, of everything that is an attraction. So we could theoretically, I think we should be able to say return string.join using the same thing we did earlier with that new line operator, right? Oh, here we go. Not new line operator, new line terminator. And we'll do destination children attractions dot select. Here we'll do, I guess, dest again, dest dot get property. We'll do by name and get string. Okay, so let's see. Get string, get property, name. So now if we go back, let me just make sure it looks good. Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room. So I think this might be it, but of course, let's go ahead and try it out. So mcp.json, we're going to go, excuse me, I've been talking for quite a while, so excuse my coughing here. My throat is a little bit dry. But let's see now if we can invoke this tool. So I'm going to go, this is going to be called the get attraction. So can you now invoke the get attractions tool from the theme park MCP server and use, let's say, Epcot as the, let's do here as the destination. Let's see what it does. Let's have some fun with it, shall we? I think this is going to be very cool. At the end, if we get something back, great. And if we don't, it's also great because it's a learning opportunity. That's how I see everything in life, really. And it's good to have that positive mindset. Man, longest video I think I've ever done in my whole YouTube career, which is, by the way, not just this channel. I've been trying to make YouTube videos since I was like a teen. This is by far the longest YouTube video I've ever made in my life. So destination Epcot allow. Let's see. I got a check mark, so it could be good. Done. Get attractions for Epcot returned a list of attractions. Would you like this exported as a CSV, JSON, or saved to a file? Can you just give me the list directly within this chat window? Give me the list directly within this chat window. Let's see. It's working. It's doing its thing. It's having a good time doing it. 1 hour and 18 minutes. Really, really fun so far. Let's see. All right. Evaluating. I saw there's some good information we're getting here. Okay. There was a mix-up since the previous mention was that there were only 21 items. I should clarify that. Okay. Counter attractions. Now we have Disney and Pixar Short Film Festival, The Seas with Nemo and Friends, Frozen Ever After, Awesome Planet, American Heritage, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. There's some things here I've never even heard of, like Awesome Planet I recently just saw. But anyways, this is incredible, right? Look how far we've come in not so long of a time, okay? There's a lot of things I want to do here. Let me go back to the screen here so you all can see my face. Okay, this is incredible, guys. This is exactly what I wanted to do for this video. I wanted to show you all how to make a very basic MCP server, and we did a lot in this video, okay? We used the Model Context Protocol framework. I'll have a link to that in the YouTube description. And we started creating a basic MCP server. I picked the theme park API because that's just a fun and entertaining API for me to use. I thought it would make it more fun for viewers of the video. And we saw how we can create some tools that should express intent, right? We should not map endpoints to tools, make it a one-per-one mapping, because I think, if I remember correctly, the agent will then have to invoke multiple tools to get the results it needs, whereas we can actually just use a tool that can combine results from multiple different sources into a meaningful result. Okay, so again, MCP, we did the server, we showed how to even start it by creating the mcp.json file, inside of Visual Studio Code using this standard input output. We use all the framework stuff, and we finally ended with two tools that can get us a list of all destinations and also a list of attractions within a theme park. And the first one we did here was Epcot. And let's see if we can even do something else. Okay, let's just have a little bit of fun with this here. Let's see. Okay, now can you give me the list of attractions for Universal's? Let me see if this works. Universal's Universal Islands of Adventures. Another one of my favorite theme parks here in Florida. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to go there. I love roller coasters. I love Velocicoaster and Hagrid's. It's freaking awesome. Let's see what it does here. I'll add a short to do and then call get attractions for Universal Islands of Adventure. Let's accept this, get attractions. Okay, there you go. We're back in business. We're not back. We were never out of business. We're still in business. Jurassic Park Discovery Center, The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, Carousel, The Cat in the Hat, Dr. Doom's Fearfall. I mean, these are incredible rides. Hogwarts Express, very, very good rides. Highly recommend going on it. Anyway, we have done a lot, okay? My hope now is to continue adding to the same server. In the following videos, I'm gonna be working on the same code base. Hopefully I can dive a little bit deeper into some of the code here, make it a little bit more robust, make it a little bit more professional. Maybe we can create our own theme park client. That way we don't have to duplicate the code for get destinations. Maybe I can finally learn about what some of these freaking methods do, because I just haven't written code like this in a while. It's kind of very different from the sort of stuff I do at work, okay? And we can just start adding some of the stuff that we learned from before. Maybe we can look into more MCPs. We can look into modes. We can look into memory. We can look into sub-agents. We can have a lot of fun with this. So I have a lot planned, a lot more long form videos to come up. So if you like this type of content, you like hands-on coding, you like this whole MCP, whatever, you enjoy learning about this, like the video, subscribe, leave me comments. What is it that you want to learn more about? Do you hate C#? Do you love C#? Is MCP your jam? With all that being said, I'm going to go drink a nice glass of water because my throat is now starting to get itchy, but crazy. It's exactly what I wanted for this video. It couldn't have come out any better in my eyes, so I hope you all enjoyed it. And with all that being said, I hope to see you all very soon. The next video I'm probably going to make is actually how to do debugging, because debugging here, as you see, sometimes you can return a string. You can do a try catch and return some exception and try to get some information from that. But I would love to try and debug and actually step through the tool invocation within Visual Studio Code. And there is a way to do that. I haven't exactly figured it out yet. For me, at least it's been a little bit more complicated than I'd like for it to be. But once I get the video down, once I get the way down to do that, I will make a video probably using the same server, and we can learn how to debug together, just to get something a little bit more interactive. So, all right, this is it for real. I'll see you all next time. Have a great rest of your night. Happy coding. Get involved, read the website, do all the coding stuff yourself, get your hands dirty on the keyboard, and just have fun with it. See you all next time. Later.